Hello everybody, Larry Young here again with another segment of OLaMan Living Life with Purity. And today I want to talk about purity and what it means when it comes to running a church or a parish. And I'm reminded of the stern warnings that were given repeatedly by Archbishop Fulton Sheen back during his programs in the 50s and 60s. I think into the 70s too. But he was constantly trying to remind the viewers that it is the ultimate job of the faithful, the members of the church and the community, to make sure that their priests behave like priests and their bishops behave like bishops. And he warned about this because he was concerned and convinced that the church in its capacity will not and does not police itself and will not correct itself. Because of convenience, they want to make sure that things just keep moving forward and that we can keep the communion of the members of the church together. Now, the word communion means agreement in principle fully with each other, but not when it comes to the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church changed the meaning of the word communion in the way they use it, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So this is part of the slippery slopes of denial and excuses that they can put out repeatedly to try to keep the general population at bay and like, nothing to see here, folks, nothing to see, keep going, the Lord's in charge, keep praying, that type of stuff whenever something comes along that's terrible and they really don't want to address and talk about. So I've got a situation to discuss today. So Fulton Sheen's going to be beatified on September the 24th, 2026 in St. Louis, Missouri. I think that they call it the Dome of America or something like that. I don't know if they've renamed the stadiums down there, but there's going to be a large gathering, I imagine. It'll probably be a pretty packed place. But they're going to finally beatify Archbishop Sheen. And I think it's a shame that they're beatifying Archbishop Sheen and they're not paying more attention to Archbishop John Knoll, who basically helped create Archbishop Sheen and his popular presence around the country. But they go for the star, the popular one, but they don't really salute the person who brought the substance to things. And that was Archbishop John Knoll. But hopefully someday people will realize what an amazing man he was and what he did to help protect and defend the church in instances like this that I'm going to talk about. And he also called for accountability. So Sheen and Knoll were both very much about accountability, and that, you know, you can't just keep sweeping things under the rug. We can't just pray things away. We have to take positive and decisive action when it's required. And this is all part of preserving the dignity of the church itself and the operations that go on in local parishes and relating to the individuals, members of the church. So you and I and the other guy. So Fulton Sheen's going to be beatified. And a lot of people say, well, why did it take so long? I think the guy died in 78 or 79. I'm not quite sure. Somewhere around there. It was in the 70s, late 70s. And a lot of people said, what took so long? I mean, this has been, 45, 46, 47 years. Why take so long for some beautiful preacher, teacher, and just man in general? Well, when the discussion started, Fulton Sheen's body was interred in New York, and it was up. I think it was Rochester, New York. I'm not sure, but he had been buried there. And then when talk came around about the possible beatification and canonization of Sheen, the folks over in Illinois and Missouri wanted to reclaim the body, bring it back. It was Springfield. I don't know if it's Springfield, Illinois, or is it Springfield, Missouri? Probably Springfield, Illinois, because I think he was out of there. But they wanted to bring the body back to Springfield. And there was a battle that took place on that. And you would think that people in the church would we got to do the right thing. This is where he's from. That's where he belongs. He served over here, but that's not where he began. We got to take him home. You should always be able to go home. Well, the folks in New York fought against that because they wanted to keep the body there because they felt that in the long run, this was going to be a great asset for the Diocese of New York and the state in general. It was going to bring a lot of tourists. Money comes out of that. So there was a big battle that was put on, and it was put on mainly by a guy named Cardinal Tim Dolan. A lot of you know that he's not one of my favorite people. I think the guy's an absolute pig. But a lot of people love him. You're welcome to love him. But if you go in the Wayback Machine and understand what Tim Dolan has done and how he's operated, you wouldn't be such a fan once the sugar comes off the donut, as they say. So Dolan was fighting against the removal or the change of interment places for Sheen's body, so he fought it. He ended up losing. The body went back, and now Dolan is out as cardinal, so the rails are now free from his interference for Sheen to be beatified. Now, a lot of people can say, oh, that's not what happened, but basically it is. It was all about money and power and pride and prestige, and it was all misplaced. And I think if Dolan hadn't been so full of himself and everything else, this probably would have been done, a good 25 years ago before he actually took the chair in New York. So that aside, Sheen's being beatified. Things are back on pace. It took probably 3 decades too long, but here we are now, and hopefully the right thing will happen. So I'm never in any hurries on things. I just figure time will tell, but in the meantime, you can't expect me to put up with a bad situation, and you shouldn't either. So Sheen had been talking about you have to police the priests, you have to police the bishops, just like in the instance I talked about there. People should know that there was a terrible blockage that was put on this man's beatification, I think because of a prideful element out of one Tim Dolan. So he can deal with that later on, not my problem. So Sheen was talking about, Noel was talking about, you have to police the priests because they won't police themselves. So everyone says, oh, that's not always the case. The priests are, held to account all the time. Well, let's talk about this. So over this last Holy Week in northwest Fort Wayne area here in Fort Wayne, South Bend Diocese, there was a Nigerian priest who had been serving at a local parish, a very dignified, long-held, proper, and conservative valued parish, a farming community, really salt-of-the-earth type people. Well, Holy Week was going along, and there's like a lot of priests and a lot of parishes around the country. There were a lot of candidates for baptism and entry into the Catholic Church over the Easter services. And this parish was no different. They had quite a large lineup. I mean, it was a lot of people coming in. And I call this the Charlie Kirk effect, that a lot of men, especially around the country, after Charlie Kirk was assassinated back last September, a lot of men had a switch that was turned on in their brain and says, wow, what was that all about? And why did they go after him for being such a conservative and talking about things when these are the things that I agree with, and they're killing a guy that I agree with, and what am I doing? And so a lot of these guys got turned on to a spiritual responsibility, and they all felt, well, I need to be doing something. I need to be part of a church. I need to change this. And whether they had somebody in their family was already a member of the Catholic Church, which is mostly the cases, husbands joining to the delight of their wives or their spouses. So the men stepped up, and they brought a lot of women with them as well, entire families, a number of children. So across the board, there was this huge uptick, but a lot of men, which is a really good thing because these guys all got the switch turned on. So they're now being accountable. They're all being thoughtful in a different way than they were less than a year ago. So thank you, Charlie, for your sacrifice. I think it's not going to go to waste because people are going to remember, and I'm going to make sure that they do. But anyway, in light of that, we had all these people come into the church. Very, very happy, very, very excited. But something was missing on Easter when they were being baptized. And what was missing was the priest who'd done a lot of the training and formation of these people through the RCIA classes for the previous, several months. Now, they weren't alone. There was a lot of lay people that were helping with this, but the priest in general that was running this thing was the local pastor. Well, on Wednesday of Holy Week, he did Mass. Thursday of Holy Week, he wasn't around. He wasn't anywhere to be found. He was back in Nigeria. What happened? Well, sexual misconduct. And it wasn't an allegation. It was truthful. The priest admitted it. And the person who told people was the victim of this. We don't know if it was a male or female. But they got the cloak of secrecy thrown around them right away. I mean, the church responded very, very quickly to this. They gathered around this person, and they basically put their old prayer warrior hats on, and they convinced this person to not go to the police, which was the wrong thing to do. This is why the church has such a bad reputation with the priests, is because when this stuff happens, they try to take care of it all in-house and say there's nothing to see here. We have corrected this person, and we are going to pray for you. And they hit them with this whole virtue wave upon them, and they get to their depth of feeling about things and say, don't hurt the church. You're only hurting yourself, this kind of stuff. But this is bullshit. Because when somebody does something wrong and there's not full justice and exercise of the law, it's going to happen again. And this is why this contagion continues, is because this cloak of secrecy, no police, no settlement, just they come out, somebody comes out, a wonk from the local offices, diocesan offices, says, nothing to see here, we just need to pray for everyone because we're so solemn and virtuous. But in the meantime, all they're trying to do is protect their legacy and their parish. They're for get the money and comes down to money. So all these people that got baptized on Easter Sunday, the priest that was in charge of getting them formed wasn't there. They didn't know what happened to them. They didn't find out until the next day when they found out that there was this shenanigans going on, and the diocese came in and swept this guy up and said the priest is gone now because his bishop over in Nigeria called him home. Yeah, okay. He called him home so he didn't have to pay his bail because it was cheaper for the one-way ticket back to Nigeria than it was to bail this guy out, pay for his legal fees going forward, and to deal with the actual truth of the matter here. So, be that as it may, it's total whitewashing of a terrible situation, and this is a problem. This is not purity. This is trouble. And anyone who says it's not is not looking at the truth. And who's not looking at the truth? Well, half of the congregation is not. So, imagine yourself being one of these 30 or so people that just got baptized on Sunday, and then you find out on Monday that the guy who was instructing you was a creep, and he's gone. How do you feel? How does that make you relate to things that you just committed to? Everyone's going to have their own take on it. I'll let you have it, but I know what mine would be. I'd be pretty let down. Well, when they had the discussion with the parish meeting, I think was finally the following Monday or Tuesday, right after Easter. They had a full house there, and they gave them their story. The diocese gave them their story. Nothing to see here. Everything's going to be fine. And what did the parish ask for? 50% of the members asked for, next one you send us, make sure he's an American, speaks English, we don't want any more of these foreign priests in here, because they had been like an outlier parish, and they were always getting like the missionary priests that were bringing in, whether from India or Nigeria. Nice guys on the face of things, but they got an undertone that is in there and is problematic. And the cultural assimilation is not there. And so these people that are out there, tilling the soil and doing the hard work in the communities, they're not up for debate as far as what words are to mean and things like this. When the church wonks come along and want to say, nothing to see here, we all got to be at peace. This is all about communion in the church. Well, let's talk about being in communion with the church. So most people would think that communion means to be in agreement with each other. But in the Catholic Church, it's not to be in agreement with each other, but to be in agreement with the church. So you could be pissed off and hotter than a fresh nail with the person sitting next to you, and going to communion, both of you, is not a problem. Well, I wouldn't say that that's being in communion with my local other members of my church if I'm at odds with them and they're at odds with me. I think there's a problem there that needs to be addressed. Now, the Catholic Church says, it's all about you and the relationship with the church. They take care of their own, blah, blah, blah. Communion is agreement with the church, not necessarily with each other. So that being said, 50% of the congregation was asking for, that's a general number, but 50% of the congregation was asking to make sure they got an American to be their replacement priest going forward. They said, we'll see what we can do. And the other 50% was angry about something else. You'll never guess what they were angry about. But they were angry that they didn't give the man, weren't able to have the time to give the man a proper going away party. Good grief. 50% of the congregation, after just hearing that the guy had creeped on one of their other fellow members, and they want to throw the guy a going away party? This after the diocese got the man on the first flight out of town to get him out of jurisdiction, and then to push the victim to not do anything? They did it nicely, but they still did it. This is a problem. This is a problem with the culture of the men and women who are running the administrations in the Catholic churches. It's the same kind of thinking that led to their entitlement with these NGOs and Catholic charities to take government money and to bring illegal aliens into the country in massive numbers, and then to victimize the rest of the country with their behavior and what they did, at their actions. They didn't ask anyone else if it was okay. They just did it because it's the right thing to do. It's what Jesus would do. No. I do not submit to Jesus would have done that. Jesus would have done what Catholic Charities has done for decades. And that's to go into these other outlying areas around the world, build hospitals and schools and churches, build up the infrastructures, dig wells, raise people's level of living in these areas and bring some dignity to them. Not tell them all to hopscotch, get on the bus, we're going to take you to a plane, and you're going to go to St. Louis, Missouri. That's what Catholic Charities did. And Catholic Charities is now working against the country in another way, and I think this is directly tied to the Vatican's instructions through Leo XIV. And he has openly said that he wants these bishops to oppose and to do whatever they can to obstruct the deportation of people. He wants to help with the immigration and to fight the deportation. So this is basically like kind of declaring war on another country through a passive resistance type of thing. Calling on his soldiers around the world, and especially in the United States and Europe, to battle against the deportation of these poor, poor people. Now, a lot of these poor people are doing a whole lot better than the working stiffs around who aren't getting $2,500 a month of free cash and health care and all this other stuff. We are not in communion with each other. So today was the first Sunday after all this happened at this local church. And I'm interested to see what the feelings are of the people who went there. Because 50% of the parish, wanted the guy to be held accountable, and they wanted a determined response from the diocese. The other 50% wanted to throw the guy a party. This isn't working. We got to fix this, folks, and we've got to get to the accountability. We've got to hold our priests, our bishops, our dioceses responsible. This is not the way to do it. This is not purity. I think Our Lady just has her head hanging in sorrow right now with the disgrace, I think, that has been brought upon her efforts and that of the remaining 11 apostles at that time, when they worked so hard and faced so many perils to start the original church. I don't think this is what we're supposed to be doing. I think we need to change. I think we need to take a hard look at this. I'm going to be following this. I'm going to have my friend Alex back in here, who actually attended that church and has been doing a lot of work with them over the years. And I know he's really saddened by everything that's going on right now, and he's not happy. So I'm letting him have some time to sort of cool off a little bit and see where everything kind of levels out here a little bit and see what goes on. So we have to be disciplined, and we have to take responsibility for these things, and we have to do a better job at protecting our people. When trouble like this happens, answering the problems in this way only exacerbates the problem. It only makes it easier for the next guy to get away with it. And this is not the way to build quality. This is not the way, I think, to honor Jesus through our church. So you do what you want to do. I'm not happy about this. So I'd like to hear your comments on that, because if this is going on in this church out here and they're trying to say there's nothing to see here, no media knows anything about this, the police haven't been told about it, but people are open to, and so I am. Because if the church won't talk about this, then it's up to us to have to talk about this. This has to change. It has to. It's the only way to elicit purity in our lives, because if this is allowed to continue, quit. Go find something else, because this isn't good. So in the meantime, I love you, and I'll be back.